So we're live. So good evening, everyone, and a happy new year to everyone. I hope you all had a great start to the new year of 2023. Today, January 4th, 2023 is the Planning, Economic Development and Housing Committee meeting. I am Councilman Sanchez and the chair of this committee. This meeting is being broadcasted live on HPA-TV's Xfinity Government Channel 96 and Frontier Government Channel 6032. It will also be streamed via HPA-TV.org, the HPA-TV Facebook page, and HPA-TV Apple TV, Amazon TV, and Roku apps. It will also be made available on the HPA-TV YouTube channel. I would like to acknowledge my colleagues here, who's a voting member, Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon. I also have on the screen Councilwoman Tiana Hercules, and my other colleagues will be getting on soon. I'd like to also recognize Corporation Counsel Richard Fasaggio, and also I have here from Planning and Zoning, Evelyn St. Louis and Erin Howard, as well as Amy Chambers. And I have David Barakowitz, I believe, who's going to be doing the presentation as well. So let's start the ball rolling here. So right now we have 4 items on this agenda. And item 2.1, which is a resolution calling for a designated area for the tractor trailers to park. Now this resolution is not ready for discussion today, and I would like to send this resolution to the next PDH meeting, which is February 1st. I would like to entertain a motion to postpone.
A motion to postpone the item.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made to postpone and properly second. All in any discussion? Okay, no discussion. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. We're moving on to item 2.2, which is a resolution regarding the post-closing use of the mirror facility. And being that the timing of this was late last December, and with all the holidays going on, I'd like to entertain a motion to postpone as well, so that we can give the state delegation time to respond to this resolution and send it to the next PDH meeting, which is February 1st.
Motion to postpone the item until February 1st.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you. So this is the first 2 items, 2.1, 2.2 will be postponed to the next PDH February 1st meeting. Thank you. The next item now is 2.3. Mayor Bronin with accompanying resolution authorizing the city of Hartford to acquire the property located at 81-99 Bartholomew Avenue, which is in the Parkville area. And who is here to speak on that resolution?
Good evening, Councilman Sanchez. I am here from Development Services to present this.
Okay, thank you, Erin. So you
Awesome.
have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. I am here tonight just to walk over the 81 Bartholomew proposal. What we are seeking tonight is to authorize the mayor to execute the option agreement that we entered into with the property owner at 81 Bartholomew. If you recall, this property was identified as one of our key projects within the Parkville Arts and Innovation District. We entered into this option agreement when we started that process back in March last year. The plan was to acquire the property and promote it for future redevelopment and have it tied to the Parkville Arts and Innovation District plan. We entered into this option agreement with the ability to extend it for 6 months, which we did continue to do. During that period of time, we did some due diligence. There are not any major issues or concerns with the property that we should be concerned with. While we have not received any real formal news back from the state of Connecticut as to the position of the Parkville Arts and Innovation District Quarter Grant, we didn't want to lose momentum. As you were aware, there's a lot of activity happening in Parkville, and with or without the Innovation Quarter Grant, there's just a great opportunity to continue to promote redevelopment in this district. And so we would like to move forward with the acquisition of this property, which is why we're here today. The terms of that, the option agreement ends in February, the end of February. So we're looking for this approval so that we can notify the property owner that we would like to exercise that option. It's important to note that it's the Champlin Packwright building, and there is currently a manufacturing company operating in the space. I know the question, we've already tried, why are they closing or why do they want to leave Hartford? It's actually because they're downsizing and they've made some reorganization in the company. And so they have been working on an expansion. I believe Manchester is where they have another building site where they're consolidating and moving into that space. So that would happen with or without us proceeding. And they were looking to sell the property. So in this option agreement, the reason you see the option for the seller to extend the closing date past the 90 days that is currently written into there is to allow him that opportunity to move his operations from Hartford to Manchester during that period of time. I do suspect that the property owner is going to request that closing date, but we wanted to make sure that we could move forward with exercising that option in time to effectuate that sale. The sale of the property is proposed 0.1 million that was negotiated, and I believe per the resolution, the city is also asking that authorizing us to utilize and draw upon the resources of the city's capital improvement plan, which is I think the surplus funds that were in there, just confirm, in order for us to move forward with that transaction. Other than that, I can answer any questions or comments about the project, but that's pretty straightforward as to what the acquisition is. I think the only other thing I would add is I do not believe this was referred to planning and zoning as an 8-24 referral. We did not see anything, so I do believe that this will still need to get referred for planning and zoning, just for clarity.
Thank you, Erin. So I'm gonna ask my colleagues, do we have any questions for Erin or comments? Councilwoman Surgeon.
So question, Erin, thank you very much for attending the meeting. So the 824 review from the Planning and Zoning Committee, when would that, is it on their agenda, and when will that meeting take place?
So I have Rich on the phone as well. I do not believe that when this was submitted originally to council that it got referred to planning and zoning. So I do need you guys to take that action. We have, for clarity, you guys have been able to move forward with your approvals in the past, but because this is an acquisition, we would still do the planning and zoning referral. So it's possible that you can do, if you're comfortable moving this forward. I think the concern I have is just timing to make sure that we have enough time to exercise our option by the end of February. I would recommend that we, if you're in agreement, move this back to council for final approval with the condition that it gets a favorable 8-24 referral. And once we have that referral coming from the town clerk's office, which we hope to have today or tomorrow, after this, they can go forward with doing the 8-24 review. And I believe that we would be able to make it to the January, I believe it's January 24th planning and zoning meeting is when we would be able to potentially get that on their agenda. If not, then it would be this first meeting that they have in
So you're
February.
still on through you, Mr. Chair. So you still have until the end of February. We still have 3 council meetings until the end of February to approve this. So
Yeah.
because you said that your deadline is the end of February. Is that correct?
It is.
And that basically is extending the option to the sellers to buy the property.
It's exercising the option agreement. So giving us the authority to then go forward with exercising the option and finalizing. Basically, it would be I'd have to confirm, Rich. I think I can't remember. I'd have to look at the option agreement. I think we'd have to enter into agreement that gives us the closing date, like sets a closing date based upon whatever the seller comes back on. The way it's written now, it'd be 90 days from that date that we close, but I do know they're going to ask for the extension. So I do believe we have to enter into some sort of agreement if the option agreement doesn't cover it already.
Okay,
Rich,
so then my only other question through you, Mr. Chair, is there going to be any environmental issues or discussion to take a look at the property before we purchase it?
So we have actually done that, and we do not have any major issues or concerns related to that property. We did do our due diligence. There was actually some previous environmental work that had happened at the site before Champlin took it. It used to be, and I'm not the historian, I'm sure some of you may know, that actually used to be part of an overall campus. So there was some environmental work and responsibility and cleanup that was done as these properties transferred into different hands. And so, and I will confirm really quickly, but based on our review, there's not anything really for us to be concerned about as it relates to the environmentals in this property.
And then through you again, Mr. Chair, so did you do an appraisal that would make sure we have a good price for the property?
So we did not move forward with an appraisal on this property. We were working with the property owner to get to a point where there was a value of the property that would work in order to help effectuate his transaction and what he was looking for. I do not believe that the 2.1 though is far off from what we had as on our assessed value, and I can look that up as well.
And I'm trying to see how, I mean, I know from the outside, looking at the outside of the property, I know where it's located, but how much square feet is this? I know it's a huge building.
Sure, it's just under 80,000 square feet.
Yeah, I know it's humongous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to see. And you also attach a warranty deed to the agenda item. Could you explain that to me?
I think that's just the legal, Rich, I'm pretty sure that's just the legal description of the property.
Correct. That was attached as to reflect how title was taken, and that's what they'll be delivering to us. So it was attached for purposes of the legal description contained within it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's basically, so that is a property, those are the property owners and the exact address. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
No more
thank you,
questions at this
Councilwoman
time.
Surgeon. Councilman Gale?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilwoman Surgeon, for asking the question about environmental. And I do think we ought to get that answer before moving forward with this. I assume, as you've indicated, Ms. Howard, that the city did some degree of due diligence, and I think we'd all be interested because we know that different people have gotten caught flat-footed at times with taking title to a property and all of a sudden then being faced with millions of dollars of remediation. And I don't know, remind me, what's the ultimate plan for this particular property?
Sure. In the Parkville Arts and Innovation District, we talked about turning it into like a co-op working space, bringing in like the district model and attracting some outside companies as it related to manufacturing and digital skilling. And so we talked about doing like breaking it up into 3 components, having this co-op space, bringing in other outside companies from outside of even Connecticut to come in to support statewide our major manufacturing companies and our small manufacturing companies across the state in order to support and create the environment for digital skilling for Industry 4.0. It's the whole new world of technology around manufacturing. And so we were trying to kind of create a place where these companies could come in, learn on the new technologies, support both our major OEMs and SMEs across the state of Connecticut. And at the same time, it creates an opportunity to have access to workforce. That was part of the original plan for the Parkville Arts and Innovation District. I think that at this time, that plan could still be in place, but we are also looking at alternative options to stay within the theme of the Parkville Arts and Innovation District, as you know, is defined in the city's plan of conservation and development. And so trying to look at other ways, do we create attract an entertainment kind of venue? Do we attract more? Is there something that we can still do on a commercial development? Is there something we can do on an amenity based? All of those things can support the development in that area. And I think the most important and critical thing for all of us is that we have learned that having site control is one of the most advantageous thing for the city as we drive development anywhere across the city. And in all of our development deals, when we've had site control, we have been able to really facilitate economic growth and development. And so we saw this opportunity now, and we didn't want to lose the opportunity. And so the goal would be to secure the property. As you are aware, Parkville Market is expanding and they're thriving in the middle of COVID, the opening in the middle of COVID and what's happening there. You have no good market. You have the breweries. You have the 1735 Bartholomew Avenue deal that I'm sure you all heard, and the challenge grant that the city just received, which is a mixed use development with residential units, with some commercial, with a parking garage tied to it, all in play right now. You also have Carlos Muta's 237 Hamilton Ave project, which will create a significant number of residential units as well as some commercial development there. And so we just don't want to lose the momentum, and we want to take the opportunity as we see fit in order to really truly support redevelopment in this neighborhood. I think it's fair to say that this the Parkville district over years, I mean, dating back before the 80s, has had a lot of attention as it relates to planning and development and investment through the CT fast track and things that have been happening. And so some of this has happened on its own organically with the investments by developers like Carlos Muta and others. And I think, like I said, we're just at this opportunity where we didn't want the Parkville Arts and Innovation District grant to stop us, regardless of what happens with the state, from promoting redevelopment in Parkville. I just think we have this amazing opportunity to really see something happen there. And so while we may not have a definitive plan of the use of the property today, it would be in our best interest to secure it for that future development. And the last thing I would say to that is every single development deal that's happening right now in the city of Hartford has needed some form of public subsidy, regardless of where it's located, in order to facilitate growth and development in our neighborhoods. And I think another point to point out is that where we've had very strategic investments that have been made in a neighborhood, Danny Core, in a concentrated area, we just don't want to miss out on that opportunity there. And that's the reason for that ask.
So I hear you saying that with the site control gives us the ability to push the development in a direction that we think is going to be beneficial to everybody, and that might not happen if this owner simply put the property on the market and sold it to someone else. Correct. And is it the case that this owner is indeed moving out of Hartford at this point in time, and we're going to be taking over essentially a vacant piece of property with no occupants?
Correct. They do not intend on remaining in the building. Their plan will be out as soon as we get to closing.
And what are the consequences for the city of hanging on to this building as a vacant building until that second phase, the whatever's going to come does come? What are our holding costs going to be on this?
I think we would just want to maintain some basic level of utilities on the property. We may be able to winterize it depending upon the scenario. The property is in decent shape. We would have to secure it like we have many of our other properties that we have across the city. I don't foresee there to be any major costs to us. I'm looking at, I just had William send me, just so I had the environmental information for you, what came out of the environmentals. We did the hazardous material review for the property. And so there are about about maybe $280,000 worth of abatement that needs to happen in the property. And the goal would be, and the property doesn't have any environmental major and significant environmental hazards, we don't have to do anything with the property as long as we just secure it. And so the goal would be that we would try to transfer any environmental, like we do actually with all of our properties, we usually transfer as is. We would bear the cost of environmental remediation, which is just a minor amount of hazardous material for the redevelopment to the future developer of the site. So I don't really see anything other than just making sure that we pay some basic utility bills for the property, and just making sure that it's secure during that period of time.
But we will, of course, lose whatever taxes we were getting from this property.
You will, yes. Our goal would not be to hold on to this property for a very long period of time. The goal would be to see the future redevelopment of this site. In the Parkville Arts and Innovation District plan, it was as well, that was I want to say a 20-something million renovation and redevelopment of the property, which would have increased the taxes and would have put it back into productive reuse. Now, again, I say taxes, but many times one of the things that we have done is entered into ground leases or leased out properties and those things. So all of that would be ironed out, but the goal would not be to sit and not collect anything. The goal would be ultimately to see the future development of that site, and in order to generate some revenue back to Hartford.
And I take it that from your earlier comment that the cost here is within available funds that we have. I think you've identified as surplus capital improvement funds. So we're not taking from another capital improvement project to fund this project at this time.
Correct. They are proposing to take it from the city's capital improvement plan reserve fund, not not taking away from any other projects.
No other questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Gale, and I'd like to recognize our Councilwoman Marilyn Rossetti. Thank you for joining us, Marilyn. Councilwoman Surgeon, just give me 1 second. I do have a couple of questions here. Can you? I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but what's the property tax on that property? What's the taxes on that property?
I am trying to pull that up for you right now. So let me just pull that up.
Okay. And while you're looking for that, I believe that the Planning and Zoning has a meeting next Tuesday on January 10th. But I'm not sure if their agenda will allow for this item to be added to that.
No, unfortunately, I don't think they'd be able to do the actual review for the 8-24 in time to make that meeting. They should be able to make the January 24th meeting, but it is too. They do actually have to put a formal report together, and since that was never provided to the planning and zoning team, I don't believe that they'll be able to get that on the agenda for the 10th, but they most certainly could move that forward for the January 24th meeting.
Okay. And then while you're looking for the tax value on that property, I'd like to know how was the 2.1? What was it based on? What evaluation?
So we did look at what we had for an assessed value of the property, which is I am trying to pull up. And we also looked at it based on what the property owner was willing to sell the property at in order to be able to do the move and to be able to the value of which the property owner needed. So this was a conversation between both the city and the seller to come to a value that was within reason that would effectuate the deal.
Okay, so what was it assessed at?
Let me see. I got to that page. City assessment is at, the total assessment is at about from 2021 was just over $1 million, which you know is at 70%. So that does get you
right.
That does get you pretty close to that number.
Okay, and then now is this including a parking lot that's to the right of it?
So the parking actually wraps around the building. It's not a crazy amount of parking, but it does include some form of parking. And I can actually show you the GIS map. If I'm realizing you may not know what property we're talking about, I'm happy to share my screen and show you the GIS map and some pictures of the property, if that would be helpful.
Sure, and this is I'm looking at my GIS. It shows that there's an organization called Hands On Hartford.
Hands on Hartford. Can you see my GIS screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so the property that's highlighted here, this is 81 Bartholomew. Hands on Hartford is this property here, and that's with the spaghetti warehouse.
Okay.
And for context, the 1735 Bartholomew Ave development project you've heard about in the news, which will come to you guys hopefully in the next month or two, is this property right here, which is a vacant parking lot.
And then the spaghetti warehouse is 7169, right? Right.
Spaghetti warehouse is part of 45 Bartholomew Ave.
I see. Okay.
This is a property that's privately owned. I believe it's an artist that purchased this property. He uses it for an art studio. We have talked to him. He has entertained possibly leasing out a portion of his building as part of the overall Parkville Arts and Innovation District. He really wants to still use it for arts, but he has entertained potential amenity space uses and such in this building as well. Then I had the stop sharing and pull it up.
Okay. Thank you for sharing the photos and the GIS with us to share, so that we're more familiar with the area. I noticed that, but basically the next corner, that's Hamilton Street, right? In Bartholomew.
Correct.
Okay.
And what was just south of that was the 237 Hamilton development deal Carlos Pita is working on,
Right,
which
okay.
is a couple hundred residential units along with, I'm really horrible remembering all the units for all our projects, and about 80,000 square feet of additional commercial space.
Okay, and then my last question, then I'll give the floor to Councilwoman Surgeon. Any pending interest from developers at this moment that we're aware of?
So obviously we had the interest of district at the time when we went forward with the Parkville Arts and Innovation District to come in and do, like, if you're all familiar with District New Haven, we had that developer since the Innovation Quarter, we had an LOI in place as part of that, which is now expired. But there was some interest from him in order to do something with this property. We have also been working with the property owner and sharing and trying to attract some more interest for this site particularly. Nothing completely solid. I think like a lot of our deals, we need to have some public investment to go into these overall developments. So I don't have anything like there's absolutely somebody at the table right now. We do envision though that once we take site control, as always, we probably will start to get some interest from developers.
Oh, okay, and thank you. Just real quick, please make sure that you send that environmental report to the council.
Sure.
Okay, Councilwoman Surgeon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think through your conversations and question, I've got my answer. We have a constituent watching and they wanted to know the assessment value. The assessment value, I think, is at a 1 or 1.5. And we were proposed buying the property for 2 and up, but because the city assessed their property at 70%.
Yeah.
And that's why it's way lower. So I think that is basically, basically in the sale of the property is absolutely, in comparison to what the property would have sold for.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Rossetti, Councilwoman Hercules, any questions or statements?
No questions. I do appreciate the questions asked, and I appreciate Aaron's presentation, especially just explaining the importance of the city having site control of these parcels that are strategic in our overall development. So that was helpful. So thank you for your hard work as always. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in that corridor. It should be really exciting.
Really, yeah.
Councilwoman Rossetti?
No, same as Councilwoman Hercules, comprehensive and informative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Aaron, truly appreciate the presentation, the explanations. And
Sure.
I see that you was going to ask a question or make a statement.
I was just going to let you know that you asked about what the current taxes are, so I was able to get
Okay,
that
oh,
on my
you found
screen.
it. Okay,
In 21, The real estate taxes were total 72,000 with installments of about 36,000.
Thank you for that.
Welcome.
Okay, so now the issue here is that we're waiting for the planning and zoning's approval 824. So I would like to entertain a motion to send this back to council favorably pending on an approval from the planning and zoning. But at the same token, I'd like to have a motion to send it to planning and zoning rather than let it go back to council and then forwarding from that point.
I'm confused.
Okay, so two motions.
Okay.
A motion to send it to planning and zoning for approval.
For the 824,
Correct.
isn't that already being done?
No.
I don't think it did. I don't think it actually got referred.
Okay.
So
All right. So we have, okay, got you. Sorry, Councilman. Go right ahead, sir.
That's okay. And a second motion, sending it to council favorably pending on that approval from planning and zoning.
Okay. Okay, so we have two motions to be put on the floor. So the first motion is to send this resolution to purchase the property to planning and zoning for a 824 review.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, everyone is in favor, so there's no opposing or abstaining. So this is passed so that it will be sent to planning and zoning for that 824 approval.
And so you're asking for a second motion for sending this back to council favorably with favorable approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Correct.
So
And
that's the motion.
I'll second that as well.
Okay, any further discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. There's no abstaining or opposing. So this passed to council pending on that approval from planning and zoning. Thank you, Erin. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much.
And great presentation. So now I'm not sure if you're going to do the next one, or is it our Director Amy Chambers, which I'm happy to see that she's here. Hello.
Oh, hey, Amy.
Council members, how are you?
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I have to excuse myself from the meeting and apologize to Ms. Chambers. I will say that I have read, at least skimmed the report. It's fascinating, and I intend to go back to it. It looks like an awful lot of very good work, although there's a huge carve out on the environmental side of the environmental part of it, which I trust is what we're looking to the state's $1.5 million review to come back and fill that hole in. But my apologies, everyone. You were so kind as to appoint me a commissioner of the MDC. I'm late for that meeting, so I'm going to go off and do that. Happy New Year,
Councilman Gale.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is 2.4, which is the Brandon Airport Visioning Study presentation. Would that be you, Director Chambers?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, council members, for having us tonight. I'm here with Evelyn St. Louis, Senior Planner in the Planning Division, and David Vega Barakowitz from WXY. They are the consultant who worked with the staff on the development of the study. I'm really just here to give a kind of high-level introduction and turn it over to David, who is prepared to give a presentation on the findings. The staff worked over the course of the spring and into the summer on what we've kind of called a relatively high-level study into kind of the exploration of a variety of alternatives with regard to the Brainerd Airport site. We definitely explored opportunities from a market standpoint for development in the event of the closure of the airport, but have also left the study open-ended insofar as if it were not decommissioned as an airport, how could it be utilized differently or to serve the city differently. And David will go into detail on that. This is a study, and again, it was a relatively high-level study. There was some community engagement done, but it was not done to the degree that we would expect as far as a plan goes or anything like that. This was more meant to be exploratory and to gather some kind of basic information that we could use to do a deeper dive in the future. But I do believe David will talk a little bit about our process with community engagement anyway. With that in mind, we're here just to share information with you this evening. This is not a document that we're necessarily seeking approval on. We're also planning on presenting it to planning and zoning, but will not be seeking any sort of formal approval from them either. The last thing I'll note is just that we did have the opportunity to meet with the state's consultant not too long ago, both to share the findings that came from the WXY study and to kind of answer any questions that they may have as they kind of kick things off. So if there are questions with regard to that and that sort of coordination, we'll be happy to answer those as well. So with that, I will turn it over to David.
Great. Thank you, Amy, and nice to meet you all. I'm just going to pull up my presentation here, and hopefully everyone can see my screen. Okay. Oh, sorry, hold on. Okay, great. So as Amy mentioned, my name is David Vega-Baracklitz. I'm an associate principal at WXY Studio in New York City. WXY is a multidisciplinary planning, design, and architecture firm that really looks creatively at policy issues with cities around the country. For this particular project, we also partnered with CARP Strategies, who really served as our lead market consultant. We'd like to use our time today to kind of briefly introduce you to the work that we did with the city of Hartford around the future of the Hartford Brainerd Airport and its potential redevelopment. We're going to start with kind of a brief overview of the project, the engagement process, as Amy mentioned, our initial site understanding, and then after that, we'll provide a high-level overview of our market findings, and we'll share several different potential directions that we explored for the airport's reuse. After the presentation, I'm happy to answer some additional questions on the work. At a high level, we were asked by the city to explore two basic questions. First, what are potential alternate uses of the airport site? And second, how can the site be a catalyst for Hartford's larger goals and ambitions? One caveat to all of our findings is that this report and the planning process was undertaken in a very accelerated time frame. We were given about 8 weeks to take a review of past studies, conduct a market analysis, do a site visit, host 2 focus groups, and synthesize our findings while developing urban design concepts. While we developed a lot of work in a very short time frame, we do think that it's critical that more engagement go into this process and that the market analysis and development options have the potential to be deepened and enriched through further study, including the study that the state is undertaking right now. We've also identified some areas for further action, and we'll try to call those out throughout the presentation. With 201 acres, the airport site is one of the most significant redevelopment opportunities in the city of Hartford and the largest open site in the city. The airport and the South Meadows area was identified by the city's plan of conservation and development as a development priority. The plan also advocated for several initiatives and priorities that are potentially connected to the site, including new connections to the river, development of an entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem, knowledge and institutional growth, as well as new recreational opportunities. Early on in the project, we had the opportunity to visit the airport and to see the sheer scale of the site. We also took note of multiple levels of infrastructure that are there today, including the levee, the towpath along the river, and the adjacent wastewater treatment plant, as well as the Mira plant and the South Meadows industrial area. The scale of the site is a critical advantage. And as you can see, the airport and South Meadows are roughly equivalent to Hartford's entire downtown and surrounding area. The site is about the same as 13 South End neighborhood blocks. Throughout our planning process, we held multiple stakeholder interviews and hosted 3 workshops, including 1 workshop with city agency staff in person, a workshop with government entities and institutions, and focus groups with community stakeholders. CARP Strategies also held one-on-one interviews with a range of market and real estate experts in the region, including brokers who are active in Hartford and the state of Connecticut. During these focus groups and workshops, we asked people about their aspirations for these sites and sought to better understand which different types of uses they expressed interest in from a land use, market, and connectivity perspective. We heard a number of different key pieces of feedback from our participants. There was a strong desire to see greater connectivity and access to recreational opportunities along the river. Many stakeholders wanted to see the site as a place of connection between local institutions as well as neighborhoods and the downtown. People saw the economic value of the site as a potential job generator and a creator of opportunity for the greater region, and stressed the important regional and economic links that such a well-positioned site could have for the city. Stakeholders also identified multiple barriers and concerns with the existing site, including visual and physical barriers that are created by the highways and the levee, adjacent industrial uses that may present environmental concerns, and gaps in the street and open space network that the site could help to fill. We also heard about potential environmental contaminants, including coal tar, drainage concerns that would need to be addressed around the levee, as well as long-term flood risks from the river. Environmental study is part of the state's ongoing work. All of our focus groups pinpointed opportunities to bring people to the site and the river today in the near term, thinking about near-term access plans, improvements that could be made to biking and walking infrastructure, and long-term ideas for future connections across the river and south into Old Wethersfield. The river's importance to the city and the opportunity that the site presents for greater access to the river was stressed repeatedly during the outreach process. This was emphasized as a priority for the next phase of development. In parallel with our stakeholder engagement, the team undertook a multi-pronged market analysis to better understand the market context for the site and potential uses in a local and regional context. During our planning process, our team also undertook a review of several past studies and plans for the site and the immediate surrounding area. This included the 2006 master plan that was developed by MDC, which first explored the notion of a mixed-use development on the site, the 2016 legislative report, which recommended against the airport's conversion, and the Connecticut Regional Market Study, which explored the potential for further developing the local produce market and tying that to larger workforce development goals. As part of the study we conducted, we really wanted to understand the main economic trends in the city of Hartford. We analyzed economic data and spoke directly with real estate experts from the region to get their take on insights we found in the data. We had a few main takeaways from that investigation. First, industrial real estate is clearly in high demand, particularly for logistics and distribution. though some also suggested that demand may be close to saturated. Retail real estate is stable, but rents have shown very little growth in the past decade, pointing to a limited excess demand. We also found that there has been a decline in retail jobs in the region in the past decade. New multifamily development in Hartford is strong and has low vacancy rates. We think that this is mostly due to limited development from the 1980s until very recently. In terms of affordable housing, we noticed that there are very few units priced for lower income households. There are also fewer units priced for higher income households. These effects crowd out lower earning households. And finally, the office sector has very high vacancy rates, and there are no large projects in the pipeline, in large part due to uncertainty in office trends that we're seeing nationally. After understanding the potential of industrial uses, we analyzed job growth across specific industries we kept hearing about during our interview. The table at the bottom indicates that there is strong job growth in the more established sectors like logistics, warehousing, and medical supplies manufacturing. We also see strong job growth in emerging industries like breweries. A growing startup scene was also mentioned consistently during our interviews, and some companies are starting to find that Hartford is much more affordable than Boston and New York, and there is less competition for talent. Demand for warehousing and logistics uses are mainly driven by Amazon. R&D sector jobs are driven by United Technologies, Otis Elevator, and Pratt & Whitney. And Cardinal Health is also a key player expanding its presence in the region. During the course of our interviews, other sectors were also mentioned: data centers, urban agriculture, film studios, and other institutional uses. We did not look at these in greater depth, but additional research on these uses could definitely be beneficial. In general, economic trends support the idea of developing new industrial and mixed uses that could spur job growth for the city on the airport site. Based on our stakeholder engagement, site research, and market study, we synthesized 3 potential development paradigms and then scored each of these paradigms against an evaluation matrix that was developed based on community feedback. The evaluation matrix integrated several themes and ideas that we heard during our outreach. These represent a set of 7 pillars that helped to govern our analysis. This included the importance of developing a proposal that has a clear community benefit and enhances access to the riverfront, one that minimizes and mitigates past and present environmental justice issues, which have tended to locate heavy industry, infrastructure, and their negative externalities near poor communities of color, that the site should be transformative and serve as a place-based catalyst for future growth with spillover effects, that the site's use needs to be based in market realities and should have real demand for the uses that are proposed on the site, but also be financially viable in terms of infrastructure and connectivity. Management and governance, including the model for how the site is developed over time, was contemplated, as well as the economic impact of the site itself as a job creator and an economic resource to its surrounding neighborhoods. Past airport redevelopment efforts provided a backdrop for our analysis and have tended to occur in strong markets with significant development pressure, especially for housing, and have tended to focus on housing, open space, and new transit connections and new transit lines in many cases. We also looked across the country at a variety of different benchmarks for brownfield redevelopment, including the Philadelphia Navy Yard, Port Covington in Baltimore, Assembly Row in Somerville, Massachusetts. All of these illustrate varying models for how to rethink and economically reposition large sites such as this. With that in mind, we advanced 4 potential options for the site. These options represent different pathways for future development, but don't represent all of the different uses and ideas that we heard during our research. Option 1 contemplates maintaining the existing airport in its current configuration. Option 2 explores the potential to reutilize the site as a logistics and distribution center. Option 3 considers the site's potential for mixed-use development with new open spaces and connectivity. And option 4 considers the site as a future base for aviation technology, drone, and automated vehicle testing. We'll discuss the pros and cons of each of these options. Keeping the airport in its existing state would essentially follow the recommendations of the 2016 report, which described the modest benefits of the existing airport use to the local aviation industry, recreational flight, and regional industries. While this would have limited community benefits, the city could still hypothetically explore improvements to the river and consider options for stronger links to adjacent communities, new connections to the regional market, paths along the levee and towpath, and improved connections to the Connecticut River. Improved riverfront connections, it's worth noting, were considered in all of the options that we looked at. If considered in tandem with the existing use, the city could look to San Jose, Boston's Logan Airport, and other precedents for how to safely marry airport security concerns with riverfront access. Levee access also has precedent across the country, including in Hartford itself, as well as many other cities. Many of the market informants we interviewed focused on logistics and distribution as a logical use for the site. This has been a hot market across the country, and with the site's strategic links to infrastructure and the ongoing development of Rensselaer Field for logistics, this was top of mind. At the same time, this use did not match the feedback we received from the community, and many people were hesitant to accept this as the best use of the site. Some participants felt that a logistics center would create more truck traffic, noise, and problems for the community, while others said that it could bring middle wage jobs to a neighborhood that needs them. While this option scored well for its market demand and viability, it scored low from a community benefit, environmental justice, and economic impact perspective. While challenging, a logistics use could be explored in combination with multiple other overlays, including a recreation or sports venue similar to Riverbank State Park in New York City, which was built over a wastewater treatment plant. And this would likely require a separate access plan and parking for any public uses, potentially with a tie-in to the levee path in the future. Multiple other overlapping uses were contemplated and evaluated, including renewable energy, urban farming and food production, as well as other ideas that could be linked to the regional market's growth. Many people we spoke to were excited about the site's potential as a mixed-use activity center, including housing, commercial, and entertainment uses. People felt strongly that such a large site is an opportunity for transformation and a critical chance that can't be squandered on only industrial or distribution uses. Despite this enthusiasm, the complex phasing of this option, coupled with high infrastructure costs and an uncertain market, make this option very challenging. Nonetheless, the team explored how such an option might begin to take shape. Given the 30-foot levee, any residential development on site would likely need to be raised to the levee crest to take advantage of riverfront views. Infrastructure and parking could be situated below that base and could be imagined as a car-light campus with signature open spaces that cascade down to a larger commercial, entertainment, and even light industrial uses as one transitions to the South Meadows area. While the South Meadows area was not part of our scope, potential transformation of that zone and the Connecticut regional market could also support a more ambitious mixed-use development opportunity. The scale of such a development could be multifamily residential, as illustrated here, or potentially lower scale townhouses like we've seen at Denver's Stapleton Airport and Austin's Muller Airport. Redevelopment of the existing Mira plant, while not part of our site and study, was considered as an important link that would need to be addressed, including potential adaptive reuse opportunities for that site. The team also considered the idea of creating new connections between Goodwin University and East Hartford, which has an ambitious redevelopment strategy of its own for the other side of the river. The last paradigm that the team considered was the idea of transforming the site into an advanced manufacturing, R&D, and aviation technology hub. With a strong legacy in aerospace and aviation, including United Technologies, Pratt & Whitney, and other companies, and the site's existing FAA designation, reimagining the site as a hub for new aviation tech is appealing, especially from an innovation and economic development perspective. The FAA has established 7 official airports for unmanned aircraft testing, which support aeronautical research, drone testing, and infrastructure development. Many universities, including the University of Buffalo and the University of Michigan, have built large-scale test sites for emerging transportation technologies. In Contra Costa County's airports in California, 2 municipal airports, Buchanan and Byron Field, offer startups and businesses an opportunity to design, develop, and test in both environments in the heart of the Bay Area. A similar model could be applied to Brainerd with the explicit goal of making Hartford a testing ground and an incubator for small companies from the region to test the future of flight. While this paradigm would require further research from both an FAA process perspective and for its economic viability and benefits, it connects well with many of Hartford's broader economic development goals. Nevertheless, it also comes with some risks. Some communities may feel that keeping the airport in this use is a missed opportunity that further limits site access, while others may not like the noise and other factors that come with testing. The overall demand for this type of site would also need to be further assessed. Despite this, converting the site to an innovation use centered around aviation technology would potentially allow for the reuse of a larger portion of the existing footprint over time, coupled with new infrastructure for testing. This would likely mean the closure of the existing runway to small planes with the intent of creating an open test site. Spatial requirements and the specific programs of such a test site would definitely require further research and definition. At the same time, a portion of the site near the regional market might still be reimagined with other uses, such as a new food beverage manufacturing center, urban agriculture, or breweries that could be open to the public in certain areas. While each of these paradigms offers strong possibilities in planning, design, and site access, each also has significant differences in terms of economic viability, infrastructure development and needs, and phasing. We'd be happy to discuss these trade-offs with you during the Q&A and hear other potential ideas and trajectories from folks on the call. While we didn't fully map out every step in the implementation process and fully expect that this would be largely dependent upon the chosen paradigm, our team did start to contemplate some of the initial next steps and action items for the city, as well as other factors that would likely need to be taken into account during the implementation process. Thank you. And we'd be happy to answer any questions and discuss our findings further. I've also just included some general questions to guide the conversation, which I'll kind of leave up here.
Okay, thank you, David, for such an excellent presentation here. I was looking forward to this for quite some time. So I'm going to open the floor to my colleagues, and unfortunately, if you don't mind, David, can you take this down and then we can put it back up as the questions come along. Is there any question from my colleagues? Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I've just got a couple of questions, but I think I'll just, thank you so very much, David, for that presentation. I learned a lot. Again, I totally agree with Councilman Gale that there's a huge gap of the environmental part of it that's really needed. You said you actually did 8 weeks. Why just only, it took you 8 weeks, or was it a very short time for you to review all the information and come up with this presentation?
So we actually kind of intentionally asked for this high level study and acknowledged that there would be, essentially this gap in terms of environmentals, because I think we knew that there was more to be done around, just planning and studying the site in general. In the midst of the project, we also found out, about the state's RFP, and their consultant is actually planning on digging into more around the environmentals, et cetera. So I think that the overarching goal here, at least from the standpoint of development services, was to kind of start a conversation around potential options that we could then utilize as a city to kind of galvanize around as the project moves forward, both on the state side and certainly with the committee that Councilman Sanchez has been running as well. And we wanted to just have something that kind of responded a little bit to the 2016 plan, that produced a couple of different options, but went into it knowing that there would be more that needed to be fleshed out in order to bring any of those to fruition. More so wanting to make sure that on behalf of the city, we were not, just kind of silent going into the additional studies that would be taking place, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. And I can, but for, anyway. So one of the things which I did not see is, right across the river in East Hartford, they do have a, river plan and developing their river. How would that affect our concerns or I call this wish list of what we would like to do? Did David compare that at all?
Yeah, so we, when we came out for our site visit, we did meet with Goodman University, who kind of spoke to some of the aspirations on the East Hartford side of the river, as well as kind of pointed us to other ongoing plans, including the marina, which, I think was announced a couple of weeks after we left, actually. And we also, we met with, we met with several advocates, Riverfront Recapture and iQuilt. We talked a little bit about some of the environmental challenges on the Hartford side of the river near this site. Certainly there were probably a few things that we heard broadly about the opportunity on the river. One was around connectivity in terms of transportation. So there's some ideas that have been put forth around, river taxis, river tours, others around actually creating access along the levee or along the towpath that could connect to Old Weathersfield, and sort of larger regional plans, as well as ongoing plans to the north of downtown Hartford. And then several people brought up the idea of creating a kind of direct bridge connection for bikes, pedestrians, and even potentially local traffic that would link the Goodwin University site to the airport site, which anytime we hear about a bridge, we're always excited, but we recognize that there are some significant challenges in terms of infrastructure and funding with that. But again, I think one thing that we did hear throughout the process was that people were eager for us to integrate into the thinking of each paradigm a strategy for creating near-term access to the riverfront, as well as identifying precedents where airports and open space and recreation kind of safely coexist.
So I think from remembering from the presentation, I thought majority of your recommendation away from residential would have been more industrial. Excuse me.
Here, let me bring up the
Yeah.
overall comparison just so we have that kind of as something to reference. So we looked, yeah, the three paradigms kind of have varying levels of industrial.
Mr. Chair, through you.
Yes,
Excuse me, David, could you, for my old eyes, make that a little bigger?
Absolutely, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Actually, let me just go full screen here.
Maybe it won't. It's just these words under the like logistics and mixed use. I can't see what they say.
I'm happy to zoom in if that's easier. Let me.
Sorry, Councilman Surgeon.
No, that's fine. I couldn't read it either.
Oh.
Yeah. So that helps me a lot also in putting that information in my brains too. That's good.
helps me
Yeah,
too.
and if the report hasn't been sent out, we're happy to resurface that link as well.
It did.
So these spider diagrams, or we call them spider diagrams, are kind of based off of that evaluation matrix that we mentioned earlier. So for each of them, it's kind of a diagram that's essentially keyed to an interpretation of what we heard. Obviously, going through further analysis, I think these would be refined, and further community engagement, these would be refined. And just to sort of zoom in on each of these a little bit more, the logistics and distribution paradigm is definitely the most industrial in terms of its nature, but certainly similar in some ways to some of the existing light industrial uses that are on the site. The mixed use typology would really be a combination of residential, commercial, event space, and potentially some light industry. I think on the south side of the site, adjacent to the wastewater treatment plant, having industry as a buffer may still make sense. And so we reflected that. And then in the last paradigm, we really focused on a variety of more industrial, but really economic development oriented uses. So the expectation here would be that these are not uses that are producing quite as much truck traffic. And frankly, this is an emerging market. So it would the space needs and the space considerations are something that would really depend upon whether the site became a testing field for drones or automated vehicles or other technologies. I think there are a variety of ways to sort of think about this particular option in combination with what's happening at Parkville and other places around the city.
Great. Thank you for that. I'm good now, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Surgeon. Dave, can you scroll down? If you can leave it like that, but scroll down to the spider web. If you can bring it back where we can see it again.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
I need 2 or 3 screens here. Okay, perfect.
That's good.
So mixed use.
Okay, so let's go to the one to the left, distribution center, or to my left. Yeah, logistic and distribution center. So if I look at this web or this spider web there, am I reading it right where it says community benefit is showing the least, but where it shows financial viability and management governance viability is a maximum? Is that what that means?
Yeah, that's what that means. And I can kind of quickly explain why that is. Basically for larger industrial uses or logistics and distribution uses that are space consuming, there's typically one anchor tenant, site control. Site control would be in the hands of very few players. And so from a management perspective, once that site is kind of repositioned, it's not like it's going through 10 different phases in the way that a mixed use development would. But obviously even though the kind of financial and management viability of that is high now, if that market, as some real estate experts suggested, is saturated in the region, there are some risks associated with that. So specifically thinking that, you wouldn't want to redevelop this as a logistics center and then find that there was really no market for it.
Right. Okay, thank you. But it's showing that that's the as far as community benefit and the environmental justice and community impact is at its minimum. It's not it's not very it's not a strong point for our community, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
And I would couch that in two specific ways. One is, we were evaluating community benefit, both in terms of, what is the impact of that site going to be on its surrounding areas in terms of increased truck traffic? What is the kind of opportunity cost of not doing something more high impact here? And then also, is the site going to have spillover effects and become an economic generator? And typically logistics and distribution is located far outside the city in industrial parks, not, 10 minutes, 15 minutes from a downtown. And so that was one of the big reasons where we felt like it scored very low on these sort of upper tier pillars. The one kind of qualification to that is, depending on the scale of logistics center, it may have, it may be producing significant number of jobs. And so I think that further study would be needed to assess what the actual job impact potential would be, as well as sort of to evaluate what, if any, spillover effects would be.
Okay, and can you scroll to where it says mixed use?
Sure.
Activity center. And can you go a little further? So to show the advanced manufacturing. So right here, so correct me if I'm wrong after your explanation. So the mixed use is probably the highest impact of the community benefit, environmental justice and impact, correct? And transformation for Hartford.
Yeah,
of all four.
Of all four by far, and that's also reflecting what we heard people say in terms of, there's a market risk, and there's a phasing challenge, and there's a significant infrastructure cost that makes this score a lot lower in this kind of lower section of the diagram. But the potential benefits, especially if positioned correctly and phased correctly, are significant. And then the last paradigm is a bit more mixed, depending on the sort of specific type of research campus and the mix of uses, right? If you're thinking about urban agriculture next to the Connecticut regional market combined with advanced R&D and agriculture technology, those may be uses that have significant community benefits and welcome people in. But if you're thinking about something that keeps the site as more of an airport that doesn't necessarily invite people in, that community benefit may be more mixed. So this is probably the biggest unknown as a paradigm, but certainly exciting for a lot of different reasons.
Okay, thank you for that. And just one more question. As far as job opportunities, which one would you, looking at these different paradigms, which one would probably produce the most opportunity in job creations?
I think it would be a little preliminary to venture a guess there, in part because depending on the specific use of the mixed use activity center, if it was, you would need to assess both kind of the near term and long term job creation potential. Certainly, the easiest paradigm to assess in that respect is logistics and distribution, where you could probably generate a job figure based off of comparable sites in the region. And there are definitely benefits. Those are jobs that may be on city transit lines that aren't way out in the exurbs. The advanced manufacturing, I think, probably would be the paradigm that has the greatest long-term job generation potential. But I think that job generation potential would need to be thought about both within this site and beyond the site in terms of how it would benefit other parts of Hartford, the South Meadows area, and potentially local institutions.
Thank you, David. I'm going to yield the floor to Councilwoman Rossetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. David, this is probably a simple answer, but can you explain the definition, economic impact versus financial viability? What's the difference?
Yeah, so when we refer to economic impact, what we're really thinking about there is, economically, how beneficial could this particular use or paradigm be to the city, both in terms of its financial health and growth, as well as its kind of economic development and growth. I would say, just to be frank, there's a little bit of overlap with the transformative potential category there, but it's really more specific to the economy of the city. For financial viability, what we're really referring to is how implementable is the paradigm. And so for one of the reasons where the mixed use activity center scores quite low from a financial viability perspective is because a significant amount of infrastructure would need to be laid before a site of this scale or a transformation of this scale could be affected. That doesn't mean that there isn't precedent, and it doesn't mean that places haven't done that. I mean, Muller Airport, Denver, Stapleton Airport, Downsview Park in Toronto, the airport in Santa Monica, all of them have gone through radical transformations, and there are other great examples. They take a lot of time, they take a huge amount of investment, and they're really complex from an infrastructure perspective. The fact that this site has a levee and it doesn't have a rail line that's being built right through it, I think, is another challenge that's layered onto this that other airports don't necessarily have, but that doesn't mean it's impossible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, David.
Okay, any other questions from my colleagues? Councilwoman Surgeon. Councilwoman Surgeon? You're on mute.
Sorry, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I've got a participant who's actually a resident who's actually listening to the committee and wanted to ask a question of what was the participation level for their community engagement effort? How many people attended the meetings where they were presented? And only 3 nearby NRZ on the south end. Any presentation in north or west end? Is this project a citywide community benefit?
Yeah, so I'm just going to flip back here to a little bit about the stakeholder engagement. So as I mentioned earlier, we were undertaking stakeholder engagement in a pretty accelerated timeframe for this project. So we recognize that a lot of the initial findings that we're presenting, I think, would need to go through several additional layers of community visioning. So this is a starting point, not an end point. We really tried to focus in our stakeholder engagement on these sort of 3 categories of users. And we had representatives from, at least one representative from each of these organizations at these meetings. These were hour-long focus group meetings that we held virtually using kind of interactive digital tools. And we really worked with the representatives from these organizations to try and generate an understanding of what the opportunities would be, and then translated those opportunities into the paradigms that we saw. We don't have specific figures on participation, but we're happy to follow up with those through the Planning and Zoning Office. But also just want to acknowledge that we think it would be beneficial to kind of have an expanded and enhanced visioning process for a site of this size and complexity beyond what we had started.
Okay, great.
If I could just add to that quickly, Councilwoman
Sure.
Surgeon. One of the things I do want to note is that, as I mentioned, we had a meeting with the state's consultant as they are looking to kick off what is essentially a much more expanded kind of assessment of feasibility around the future of the airport, and then beyond that, opportunities for the airport itself, or for potential redevelopment if that is the direction that goes in. And one of the things that we did raise to them was that our community engagement process was fairly limited, especially given the short period of time within which the consultant was working, that the community engagement feedback was married with the economic analysis that was done on this end, but that we would hope that they would take the information and then build upon that. And we actually specifically raised to them that we felt like this particular area is an area that it's important to have feedback from more residents around the city and not just kind of like the surrounding NRZs. We wanted to make sure that they were kind of clear about that, and not just reaching out to kind of the immediate surrounding entities, but reaching out on a more citywide level on account of the fact that this is a potential project that has the ability to really be impactful at the city scale. So that is something, in those conversations that we raised as a priority as far as the city's kind of interests and where they go next.
Oh, thanks for that, Amy. Also, let me make sure I can understand this. Why is this presentation, why was the request so accelerated? For even though you said it was a high level sort of review, why was it so accelerated, this plan?
Yeah, so I think over the course of the last year, we've known that there was something coming at this the state level in terms of change or exploration, et cetera. And again, our goal was to, at the very least, have something to start a discussion with that we could have in hand as the state initiates their work. The goal, again, was to do something that is really exploratory. So we're not looking for this to be endorsed by planning and zoning. We're not looking for this to be endorsed by council. We're not looking to use this as a plan where we kind of say and can point to, this is the plan that, we've all kind of agreed to. That's not the intent of this tool, is really to have something in hand that allows us to start a discussion, knowing that there is another level of review that has to take place, knowing that we're not the entity that has the ultimate control at this point in time over the future of the project, that we're also a stakeholder in this process. The city is a stakeholder in this process, kind of part and parcel with, residents. And so that being said, I think we wanted to kind of put something together in anticipation of what was coming next, and what coming next being that work that the state is now engaging with a consultant on doing, and just being able to have a couple of tangible ideas that help to start a discussion, but not to say, the reason why we asked WXY to come up with a series of recommendations and not like one plan that says there has to be a house here and there has to be an office building here, is because we want to just explore what sorts of economic opportunity exists, rather than do anything that is really prescriptive, because it's not ours right in the moment to be prescriptive around.
Okay. I think that answers our questions. Thank you.
Okay, any other, any of my colleagues still have any other questions or comments? I just going through the screen because it's limited. David, you can take the screen down at this moment. Thank you. Okay, so is there any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Okay, thank you. All right, being that this is a presentation, there's no voting on this item. That is a presentation that is not looking for approval and from council or any other body. So I want to thank you, Director Chambers. David, great presentation. I want to also thank Erin Howard for her presentation and introducing us to the situation with 8199 Bartholomew. So with that said, everyone have a great evening. Continue having a great new year. And Amy, I wish you the best in this new year. I wish you the best luck and in your new venture. Remember, we're here still. We're just a phone call away. So don't hesitate to call us if you need to talk to us about anything. So thank you, everyone. So does anyone want to express themselves with Director Chambers?
Oh my, me.
Yes.
Me.
Go for it, Councilwoman.
Oh, Director Chambers, I've taken this personally. I'm taking it right here. But, as I've said to you, how exciting for you, and, how great for us that you're off to, such an exciting adventure. And I really can't wait to hear what happens next for you, but you will be missed. Your input will be missed, and I will miss you personally.
Oh, thank you so much. Likewise.
Don't forget that this is her home, so she has to come back home.
Exactly.
Right.
Councilwoman Hercules.
I'll just very briefly, your expertise, your brilliance has certainly been a bright light in the city, your leadership, and your innovation. And I'm so excited to see what you do in a larger sister city, not too far from us. And certainly we'll look forward to when you are in town so we can catch up, but wishing you all the best and can't wait to hear about your adventures.
Thank you so much. And Hartford's my home. I will certainly be here. You will see me. I have so many reasons to be back here all the time. So I really appreciate all of you. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I've learned so much from each of you as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your service.
Okay.
So I call this meeting adjourned. Have a good night, everyone. Great evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.